Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Fall is all about cozy comforts, and with Hero Bread, you can enjoy all your favorites and still hit your health goals. From breakfast bagels and meal prepped enchiladas to mouth-watering burgers and cheesy noodles. You won't believe Hero Bread's options have 0 to 5 grams net carbs and are high fiber from the taste and texture. And right now, Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Go to hero.co and use code FALL25 at checkout. That's FALL25 at HERO.co. All figures are per serving of Hero Bread. Contains 2 to 18 grams of fat per serving. See the product nutrition panels on hero.co for more information.
Switching between tools for one project gets disjointed, especially on tight deadlines. Grammarly built a game-changing writing surface tailor-made for professionals to help you move ideas forward and sharpen your writing. You can brainstorm ideas, summarize meeting notes in seconds, or strengthen a proposal without context switching. Easy to get started and even easier to finish. Sign up for Grammarly free and get your professional writing from draft to done. Visit Grammarly.com. That's Grammarly.com.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Welcome to this 1865 podcast special, where we'll be stepping back 3 decades to relive Nottingham Forest's 1995-96 UEFA Cup campaign. It was a season that marked Forest's return to European competition after more than a decade away. And as the modern-day Forest are once again flying the flag in Europe, competing in the 2025-26 Europa League, what better time to look back on the Reds' last campaign on the continent? It was a journey that took in Sweden, France, twice, and Germany, with some memorable performances and unforgettable away days. While the season didn't end in triumph for Frank Clark's side, the memories they gave a generation of Forest supporters still linger to this day. I'm Stephen Toplis.
And I'm Tom Newton.
And this is the story of Forest's 1995-96 UEFA Cup campaign. The 2024-25 season saw many parallels between the modern-day Forest and Frank Clark's great team of 1994-95. Forest surprised everyone as they challenged at the top end of the Premier League, an unfancied side that was difficult to beat yet so dangerous on the counter-attack, picked up some major scalps on the way to qualifying for a European place. At one point, however briefly, they were even in the conversation for a title challenge.
Like the class of 94-95, the Forest side of 24-25 earned a place in Europe. For Nuno Espirito Santo's side, it would be the Europa League, marking the club's return to that competition and European football after 30 years away.
When Forest were last there in 1995, it was known as the UEFA Cup, and there was no such thing as a group stage, but it represented a significant achievement for a team that just over a year before had been competing in the second tier of English football.
That team of 94-95 contained a number of players who are remembered fondly, including the captain, Stuart Pearce, Ian Woan, Steve Stone, Norwegian Lars Bohinen, David Phillips, Mark Crossley, Steve Chettle and Colin Cooper. Up front, it was a partnership of Bryan Roy and Stan Collymore who contributed 35 goals between them to help Forest finish third. However, that partnership would soon be no more in the summer of 1995.
Yeah, and Stan, he'd attracted the attention of some of the biggest clubs in the country during the previous season. And in that summer of 95, he signed for Liverpool for £8.5 million, which was, at the time, a British transfer fee record. But instead of spending all the money on a replacement for Collymore, Frank Clark used it to bolster the squad ahead of the new season. In came Kevin Campbell from Arsenal for £2.8 million, Chris Bott-Williams from Sheffield Wednesday for £2.5 million, and Andrea Salenzi from Torino for £1.5 million.
Add to that to the likes of Roy, Stone, Woan, Heenan and Pearce, amongst others, still at the club. And the squad was looking in good shape ahead of the new season. And there was optimism before the campaign kicked off. Steve Chettle and Mark Crossley reminisce of that time.
We're obviously gutted that Stone went to Liverpool in the first place. Stone was our best player, but we realised that Stone had ambitions to go and play for one of the biggest clubs in the country. But we had a hell of a substitute, if you want to call it. Bryan Roy just played in the USA World Cup and comes along. Signed Kev. Kev was a great lad. We signed Andrea. Andrea was an interesting one. I think Frank had been watching some old videos of Andrea and not seen the recent ones. But again, he was a great kid and he enjoyed the English lifestyle, shall we say. So the replacements weren't so bad. Brian was an unbelievable footballer and went on to great things as well.
We went into that season, we kept 5 clean sheets in the first 6 games. We only conceded against Malmo in the first game, and then we kept 5 clean sheets then on the trot. So all of a sudden you start to think, we're as good as these. Let's just see where it takes us again. I think that was the attitude, really. And Frank liked to play with 2 holding midfield players. Remember, Chrissy Bart-Williams came in then, and David Phillips was there, and we decided that because we were such a good counter-attacking team, we played with 2 sitting midfield players. That's how we feel we can win games. So I think the 94-95 season was a great basis to take us on into Europe and give us the belief that we had when we actually got into Europe.
On the opening day, Forest travelled to Southampton and the two sides would produce a thriller. Forest, decked out in a new yellow away strip and with summer signing Campbell partnering Roy up top, got off to a great start thanks to Colin Cooper's 30-yard free kick. Despite Matt Letitia scoring a hat-trick for the hosts, a strike from Ian Woan and a brace for Roy saw Forest run out 4-3 winners.
A promising situation for Nottingham Forest. Colin Cooper is the man who's going to take responsibility for this free kick. 3 men in the Southampton wall. Cooper strike. Oh, great strike from Cooper. It's beaten Besson 1-0, and what a dream start to the season for Nottingham Forest and for Cooper. 1-0 at the Dell. Early stages indeed, and a fantastic goal from Colin Cooper. Woan, one of the scorers, picks the ball up inside his own half, slips it to Boheenan. Good work that from Nottingham Forest. Good football. Woan's away now. He looks up and he spots Bryan Roy, and Roy slips the ball home for his second of the afternoon. And surely Forest must have clinched the points. Bryan Roy with his second goal.
And that was quite an opening to the season, wasn't it, Tom?
It was absolute thriller, 4-3 on the South Coast. Steve Stone and Colin Cooper bleached to match the yellow kit at the time, but some of the goals in that were phenomenal, especially Cooper's free kick, and it was a cracking start for Forest in the post-Collymore era.
Did we ever figure out why Stone and Cooper had bleached their hair? Because it's quite a look for them, isn't it? Especially Colin Cooper. It
is, but I think at the time a lot of players were doing that. Robbie Fowler dyed his hair blonde, didn't he? Collymore did for a period. So, I think it was the in thing, wasn't it, in the 90s? So, with the era and the fashion back then. I think they pulled it off quite well, to be honest. I thought there's little hair Steve Stone has on his head. He pulled it off, and Colin Cooper. So, he went for the 95 summer look.
Yeah, very much of its time. But after that game, in the league, draws would come to define Forest's season. After beating Southampton, they went on to draw their next 4 in a row before their European campaign got underway on the 12th of September. The opponents for their first round UEFA Cup tie were Malmo. This was a nice throwback to 16 years before, when Brian Clough's Forest defeated the Swedish side to lift their first European Cup, with manager Frank Clark, the left back, on that night. And a nice bit of synergy, Tom, is that in the Malmo team in 1995 was a chap called Robert Pritz, who had actually played in that 1979 final as a youngster.
Yeah, I mean, he had a detour. I think he played for Rangers at the start of the 90s. But yeah, it's just that symmetry, wasn't it, to for him to play 16 years on. So and he was a stalwart at the side back then, in the twilight of his career. So yeah, good bit of trivia there, wasn't it, for the that Malmo Forest clash, which 16 years before we beat them in the Olympic Stadium, which we'll talk about when Steve Chettle scored that goal against Bayern Munich.
Despite Ian Woan giving Forest the lead in Sweden, Malmo won the first leg 2-1 with second half goals from Torbjörn Persson and Anders Andersson. Forest knew that all they needed in the home leg, however, was a 1-0 victory thanks to the away goal that they'd gotten through Ian Woan.
We were obviously disappointed losing away from home, but we knew that if we got them at home, as the rules are, if we score one, we win 1-0, we go through. And I think that was kind of the mantra for most of the campaign, to be fair. We didn't concede many goals. We didn't score many goals. I think after that, Auxerre only scores. After that, we keep clean sheets in Lyon and Auxerre. We keep clean sheets at home. We were very hard to score against because Norm had an unbelievable campaign in the UEFA Cup. Norm was fantastic. Until we got to, obviously, the quarterfinal against Bayern. And we're in a similar position like we were against Malmo. We fancied our chances. But that didn't end as we thought it was going to do. And if you look at it on paper, that's probably the best team I've ever played against. Probably the best team I ever would have played against, to be fair.
The return game at the City Ground 2 weeks later was a cagey affair, but on 70 minutes, Forest got their goal, and it was a belter.
Roy. Brilliant goal! And how important that could be. It might be the goal that sees Forest go through. And it couldn't have come from a more straightforward route. Crossley with a huge kick downfield. The defender Olsen inadvertently turned it into the path of Bryan Roy. The finish was magnificent by the Dutchman.
Every day at Sierra, you'll find top brand apparel, footwear, and gear for 20 to 60% less than department and specialty store prices. And during clearance time at Sierra, those incredible prices are 40 divided by 2.5, carry the 1, even lower. And when you shop clearance at Sierra, you can save a whole lot more on everything you need to get active and outside. That's a lot of saving. Epic brands, vast selection, teeny tiny prices. That's Sierra. Visit your local Sierra store today or shop online at Sierra.com.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Joining us on 1865 is someone who played for Forest from 1994 to 1997, helping the club finish third in the Premier League in 94-95 and spearheading the club's run to the UEFA Cup quarterfinal the following season. Welcome to the 1865 podcast, Bryan Roy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So in the first round of the European competition, then Forest had drawn against Swedish side Malmo, invoking memories of the European Cup final for the Forest Malmo from 1979. After losing the first leg 2-1 in Sweden, Forest needed to win the second leg and keep Forest in the UEFA Cup. And then you score at the Trent end, and it's a beautiful goal that is. So, what's your memories of that goal?
Yeah, it was nice. It's a very important goal, the first leg in the European Cup, and then scoring the 1-0 against Malmo with such a goal. Yeah, it was that's fun memories.
Yeah,
it ended up us playing the quarterfinal against Bayern.
Yeah. Because I mean, we played Malmo, played Auxerre, played Lyon, and there's some back then. Auxerre and Lyon were pretty decent sides, weren't they?
Auxerre was very good.
Yeah,
champions, eh?
Yeah. Then we played Bayern Munich, and unfortunately, it was just a bridge too far for us, wasn't it?
It was a bridge too far. Bayern Munich was a bridge too far.
It had been over 10 years since Forest last played in Europe, when they competed in the 1984-85 UEFA Cup. The ban on English clubs in Europe, which had been brought in after the Heysel disaster, meant that Brian Clough's great team of the late 80s were denied the opportunity of European football. So Forest being back there in 95-96 was a big deal. Rich Fisher is a Forest fan and author who regularly attended matches in the mid-90s, and he has fond memories of following the Reds in this period.
Oh, it was superb. I mean, it's a small matter of that season was my GCSE year at school, and a point in my life when I perhaps should have been taking my education seriously. And fair play to my mum and dad. I mean, I remember having conversations with my mum about, I really want to go and watch Forest in Europe, and she was kind of like, gave me a bit of a look and was like, is that sensible? You really need to be knuckling down at school. I made the point then, and I think with quite good force, I might never get the chance to do this again. And so, it was agreed that I would be allowed to go. And this was obviously the Malmo game. Obviously, we got through against Malmo, so I ended up going to all 4 of the away games. I think I worked out I missed a total of about 15 or 16 days of school just through gallivanting around Europe, watching Forest. And to be honest, I don't think I did as well in my GCSEs as I probably was predicted. I did pass them all though, and so absolutely no regrets.
So Bryan Roy's brilliant strike in the return leg against Malmo sends Forest through to the next round, Tom. But what do you think the team learned from that experience and that first round of the UEFA Cup?
I think Frank Clark alluded to it, didn't he, after the first leg in Sweden, that we was too open and we probably need to be a bit more defensively resolute and try and do teams on the break. So it was very good from Frank Clark. If they wanted to stay in the competition for a longer period, then obviously they had to change tacts, which they did at the City Ground. They defended really well, with Bryan Roy scoring the goal at the Trent End. And like you say, it was an absolute belter, wasn't it? And the goalkeeper didn't have a chance.
Roy's goal sent Forest through to the second round, where they would face French side Auxerre. The Reds would be away in the first leg to a team that included the likes of Laurent Blanc, Taribo West and future Forest manager Sabri Lamouchi.
Yeah, Auxerre at the time, if you remember, they had a legendary manager who'd been there for God knows how long, Giroud, and they were up against the likes of Marseille, Lyon, PSG, and they were a pretty decent side back then. The players, what you mentioned, Laurent Blanc, who would then become the World Cup winning captain. He was the captain, wasn't he? But he was suspended for the final after he got sent off against Croatia. So, yeah, he was the French captain, obviously Taribo West and that brilliant Nigeria side at USA 94. And obviously Sabri Lamouchi, who would become a French international. So, they had a lot of good players in that side. And I think they had a player called Fabien Cool, was he the goalkeeper? And I think he was on the periphery of the French squad. So, Auxerre, they weren't like a big name in France, but they've had a lot of success under Giroud during that period.
And looking at Giroud, he managed Auxerre in 3 spells, 1961 to 1962. His third spell was 2001 to 2005. But at the time Forest played Auxerre in 1995, he'd been the manager for 31 years consecutively, because he'd come back for a second spell that started in 1964. That then went on until the year 2000. That's just an unbelievable run.
Yeah, as soon as anybody mentions like Giroud and they're like, know a bit about European football in the 90s, he stands out as like the legendary figure at Auxerre. And he was just a legendary manager for Auxerre and obviously French football at the time.
So on to the game, and it was a breakaway goal from Steve Stone 22 minutes in, which put Forest into the lead, and he was played forward by a lofted ball by Alf-Inge Haaland. Stone, one-on-one with a keeper, lifts it over him. Really nice finish, and he wheels off and celebrates. Forest are in the lead, and despite Auxerre's best efforts, Frank Clark's men hold on for a priceless 1-0 away win.
Followed out by Bart Williams, then from Stone to Alf-Inge Haaland. Stone has made that run through the middle. And here's Stone now, he's in the clear. Steve Stone! It's there! Crossley on the break. Nottingham Forest have pounced for the opening goal. That vital away goal too. Scored by Steve Stone. Cool, left totally exposed then. Halfway through the first half.
A fortnight later, at the City Ground in the return, the Forest defence held firm again as they secured a goalless draw to confirm their passage into the third round of the competition. Already you're seeing the influence of that more defensive approach from Frank Clark paying off. But the week before the Auxerre away leg, big piece of transfer news for Forest. Lars Bohinen left the club to sign for Blackburn Rovers for £750,000. What's even more galling is that 3 weeks later, Bohinen would be in the Blackburn side that pummeled Forest 7-0 at Ewood Park. But this transfer, Tom, I think it left a bit of taste in the mouths of Forest fans because it was controversial, wasn't it, how Lars left the club?
Yeah, I believe it's, if you read and hear from Frank Clark in his book, what he's brought out in recent times is that it was all to do with a contract dispute that he wanted, like home improvements and things like that. And at the time, I know you look at the fee, 750,000. It was like there was players going for over £1 million, and it was just a bit of a derisory fee, wasn't it? And then obviously it bites us on the backside, doesn't it, that he scores at Ewood Park and that 7-0 thrashing on the 18th of November 95. So yeah, we've had a lot of these transfers where players leave and then come back to haunt us. But the thing is, though, we already lost Stan Collymore in the summer of 95, and to lose Lars Bohinen, who was pivotal in that 94-95 season with the goals what he scored against Sheffield Wednesday, the chip against Spurs and everything, he was just like the engine room, wasn't he, in the midfield, and we lost him as well. And again, which we've mentioned on pods in recent times, is that Forest, when they lose their best players and don't replace them adequately, we're only going to go one way. And unfortunately, the future of Forest from like the 94 and 95 season, and then 95, 96, so on and so forth, is that we lose our Premier League status. So yeah, losing Lars Bohinen for such a really low fee, it was it did bite us on the backside, didn't it?
And it feels like he was a player who would have thrived in Europe for us. Looking at his career as well, he never seemed to hit, certainly in England, never seemed to hit the same heights as he did with Forest when he went to Blackburn or Derby after that. So I think there's a case of what might have been had Lars Bohinen stayed at the club. But yeah, that game against Blackburn in November 1995, it was a 7-0 defeat, and it ended Forest's long unbeaten run in the Premiership, which stretched back 25 games. It began at the back end of the 94-95 season and spanned the first 12 games of the 95-96 campaign. I don't think it's really talked about outside of Forest circles just how much of an achievement that is. To go 25 games unbeaten in a top division anywhere in the world is something that you can't sniff at.
Yeah, it's massive. And another thing that at the time, Forest achievements weren't really talked about, of like getting promoted, finishing third in the Premier League, and then obviously the last team standing in Europe, which we'll talk about in a bit. It was all, if you remember at the time, it was all about Man U, what they've done and everything in Blackburn, because obviously they've got Shearer and Sutton up front. So Forest were like never on the radar, even though we mentioned it in the when we talked about the 94-95 seasons. That Forest, if they had that decent run around about the Christmas time going into the new year, they might have made a decent fist of actually challenging for the title. But like you says, since then, it's Forest achievements at this moment in time were been forgotten, really. It's a bit sad, really, because it was a very, very good side for that 2-year period, and the achievements don't get spoken about, does it? And another thing is that 25-game run was so good, even Forest brought a video out. So, and I think it flew off the shelves in the club shop. So, and I've got it somewhere. So,
Breaking the Record, it was called, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was. Yeah. And it wasn't a bad video actually for its time. So, yeah. But like I said, it's not enough spoken about during this time.
Forest drew 4 and lost 1 of their next 5 games, and they wouldn't win in the league again until beating Sheffield Wednesday at home on Boxing Day. However, the Reds continued to go well in Europe.
In postseason football, you need to find that extra gear. On FanDuel, it's called Playoff Mode. Big boosts, more rewards, and a whole new way to live parlay with Drive SGP. Turn on Playoff Mode, only on FanDuel.
New customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Forest were drawn against another French side, Lyon, in the third round of the UEFA Cup with the first leg at home. The score was goalless with 70 minutes gone when the turning point came. Frank Clark's double substitution of Andreas Silenzi and Bryan Roy for Bobby Howe and Paul McGregor. And it was this time, I think it was a ball over the top. And Pascal Almeta, he was a bit, if you remember him, he was a bit like the prototype for Bartes. He kept coming out. He was a bit eccentric, wasn't he? And
yeah.
I remember him playing in Out Cantona's testimonial, and he was just like coming out, and even Alex Ferguson at the time was like absolutely laughing at how he played and everything. But he comes out, doesn't he? And then Florent Laville handballs it on the line, and the Hungarian referee, who was actually the referee when England played Germany at Euro 96, Sander Puel, he sends Laville off, and it's a penalty at the Bridgeford end. And you'd put your house on it, wouldn't you, Stephen? That Stuart Pearce was going to put this away, and Almeta dives to his left, saves it, and then there's McGregor, and he absolutely smashes it in. But for the eagle-eyed supporter out there, Colin Cooper gets chucked into the post, doesn't he? And nearly chops him in half, kind of thing. But yeah, it was a massive relief, wasn't it? Because we was under the cosh in that game. I think Ludovic Julie, Florian Maurice had a lot of chances in that game, and on the night, Mark Crossley was absolutely in fantastic form, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, just as he was throughout this European run. He made some big saves, and in the second leg he does the same as well. But yeah, that penalty was key because it was with 9 minutes of the game left, and Frank Clark chucking on the youngsters in Bobby Howe and Paul McGregor ended up paying off. And I remember McGregor telling a story on one of the Forest podcasts that his parents were recording the game at home. He went home afterwards to watch it, and he watched his goal back and saw Colin Cooper colliding with the post and basically wore the tape out, kept rewinding it, watching it over again. And
at the time, it probably would have been what happens next on Question of Sport. It was that. It was kind of that thing. And then obviously the blooper own goals and gaps, it must have been on that as well. So we love you, Colin, but we do have to have a little laugh of that at your expense, unfortunately.
Forward by Gemmell. Oh, look at this. McGregor gets the other side of Laville. Almeta comes all the way. Oh, and there's a chance. And it's handball, is it, by Laville? Penalty. And he's going to go off, I think. He's already been booked for a foul. He's gone. He's off. It was his second offence anyway, but he stopped what probably looked a certain goal, Trevor.
What is the goalkeeper doing here? Look, I mean, he's done nothing except getting in his defender's way, and Laville tried to cover, has handballed it.
Oh, the keeper saves it, and there's McGregor, and there's a goal! Forest are in front.
Forest play French side Lyon, as was just mentioned, and it was a late Paul McGregor strike, scoring from the rebound from a Stuart Pearce save penalty. He'd come on for you 10 minutes earlier. Did you get injured in that game?
Yeah, I got injured.
Yeah.
The second season I had 1 or 2 injuries. I always struggle with my hamstrings, and the end of the first season I had a knee problem. And so I struggled a bit in the beginning, and at the end of the season, I got in my stride, but I got injured.
I think the club has obviously had a reputation of playing counter-attacking football since Brian Clough was in charge. We had players who were fast on the break. I remember the Auxerre game, Stoney scoring the goal. I remember we got battered most of the European campaign, to be fair. We were defending phase after phase after phase, and Norm was making unbelievable saves. Lads are throwing their bodies in front of the ball just to try and keep us in the games, because we were playing against some fantastic players and some big clubs. But but no, we found a way until it came to the quarters.
And just talking about finding a way, in the game against Lyon, the first leg is at home, and Forest get the goal finally, 83rd minute. Stuart Pearce's penalty is saved, and Paul McGregor taps in the rebound. Well, he slams it in more than taps it in, top corner. Brilliant scenes. And then Forest have a lead to take over to France for the second leg. How are you feeling going into that one? And was it a slightly different approach because you were away from home in that second leg?
It was great scenes, even though Colin nearly got snapped in half when he got through into the post. Going away to Lyon, we knew it was going to be tough. It was another bitterly cold night. It was absolutely freezing out there. But it's probably the most patriotic and the most spine-tingling speech that I've ever heard from Pearcey before the game, of saying why we would get through this game. It was kind of Churchillian, shall we say. But that was him all over, short sleeves, freezing cold, shorts rolled up, that was him all over. And it got us through the tie because, again, we got battered in that game and we had to keep a clean sheet to go through.
That goal gives Forest a lead to take to France for the away leg, where they're without Bryan Roy due to injury. So Jason Lee starts up front with Bobby Howe playing just behind him. And it was Howe who missed a big chance early on after Lee had played him in, which would have made Forest's task a lot easier. But Frank Klopp again goes with this tactic of packing the midfield away from home in Europe. And on a freezing night, Forest soak up wave after wave of Lyon pressure. Mark Crossley makes a couple of big saves, and the Reds get the goalless draw that they need to take them into the quarterfinals. It wasn't pretty, Tom, but Forest got the job done, and it was a massive achievement for the club to get through to the last 8 of the UEFA Cup.
It was, and if you look back at the footage, it looked absolutely bitter, didn't it? In France, I mean, the Stade Gerland, I know they've moved stadium now, but it just looked a really cold, concrete look of a place. And even when you look on YouTube and you look at the clips, what the fans have got in and around Lyon on the day of the game, it looks really cold. But yeah, again, Forest back to the wall performance. Crossley, Pearce, Chettle, Cooper, really cracking defensive display. And they put the bodies on the line, didn't they? They didn't see much of the ball. There wasn't many chances in the game apart from the one what you mentioned about with Bobby Howe. But full credit to Forest, and they were very resolute, weren't they? And if you remember, it's like they had Des Little, Cooper, Chettle, Pearce, and Crossley behind. So defensively, we were pretty sound, wasn't we? And they played a number of games together because obviously the 93-94 season where we got promoted, the season when we finished third, and then this, so they knew everybody's game. But yeah, it was a really good defensive display, and obviously Lyon had to come out because obviously they're trailing in the tie. And if you remember at the time, we've got some really, really good players like Florian Maurice. They had a decent left back, I think he's called Deveau, who had a decent shot on him. I think he had a couple of shots at the City ground where Crossley saved, and obviously Florian Maurice. So yeah, they had some really good players at the time, and there was quite a few players on the periphery of the French squad who would then win France 98 a few years later.
Forest were progressing in the UEFA Cup on the pitch, and in the process were providing some memorable trips for the fans following them around Europe. As Rich Fisher explains,
it was a brilliant experience. Went to all 4 of them on a bus. I mean, it was really interesting that there was different options for away travel for those games. The more flush supporters would be going on these package trips where you could fly. But the cheaper option was to go on a bus. I remember the Malmo trip was ridiculous. I think it took 28 hours to get there. With it was ferry across to Calais and then all the way through Europe. We ended up in Germany and then getting a ferry from there to Denmark and then another. It was just I can't believe we're putting ourselves through this to watch one game of football. And we literally got to Malmo like about 2:00 on the afternoon of the game. Spent didn't drink that much beer because it was about £7 a pint in Sweden. And watched the game and then straight back on the bus to do the same ridiculous journey in reverse. But again, it was a hilarious adventure. I mean, imagine being on a bus with 50 other Forest fans for that long and cabin fever.
For obvious reasons, I can understand going to Calais for like the Auxerre and Lyon games, but I'm surprised they just didn't go up to like Newcastle and got the ferry from Newcastle or Hull and just go across the North Sea and hit one of the Scandinavian countries and go on that road rather than going like through Germany, like Belgium, Holland, Denmark, etc. just to get to Malmo. But only a few years previous to this 95-96 UEFA Cup campaign, the European ban was lifted for English clubs following the Heysel disaster. What experience and what welcome did you get from our counterparts from continental Europe with the police and etc.? Because obviously English fans going over to Europe back then, it must have been a bit of a strange experience.
Yeah, I think I mean it was okay, to be fair. I mean, of all the places, I'm just thinking now, I think Auxerre, there seemed to be quite a heavy police presence and it to a point where it almost felt a little bit hostile, to be honest. But generally it was fine. And, you know, we obviously for each of the trips to spend a bit of time in the respective cities. And, you know, I think, you know, generally if you're respectful and behave in a respectful way, people will make you welcome. And, you know, certainly the people I was with, we went there to enjoy ourselves, but we were, you know, mindful of not wanting to kind of do anything that might harm the reputation of Forest as a football club in Europe. So we kind of, you know, I remember like doing things on a couple of trips, like swapping scarves with met with fans from one of the home teams. I've still got a Bayern scarf somewhere from that trip, from the trip to Munich.
By this point, Forest are the only English side left in European competition, and that result in France meant that they would carry the country's hopes into 1996. That brings us to the end of part one of this look back at Forest's 95-96 season. Join us in part two when we pick things up in the new year of 1996 and we look ahead to Forest playing in the quarter-finals of the UEFA Cup.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks to Fuel Meals, I haven't meal prepped in months. If I'm running from meeting to meeting, traveling, or finishing a workout, I've got something in the fridge that's going to help me stay on track. Fuel Meals makes protein-packed, chef-inspired meals that are ready in about 3 minutes. No shopping, no chopping, no cleanup. Check out the menu at fuelmeals.com and get 40% off your first order with code FMSAVE40. Again, that's fuelmeals.com, code FMSAVE40.